Okay, so we're in the Pratt right now. First two floors have the browse room, which is a cooperative of crafters and merchants. We're in the understage area right now of the Pratt. You can see on the walls remnants of old show bills that they put on. And that would be the stage hands, or people that can't see with the shows with glue them on the walls. Over the years, they've deteriorated. There's another one down here, because this stopped operating as a theater around 1930. They gave some music lessons after that, but they began building in 1882, and then basically it ran to 1930. So everything that you see like that is pre-1930, obviously. At one point in time, there was always mercantile on the first two floors, and that we found in the basement, wrapped up, buried under some dirt in the corner. So that, probably around 1900, 1895, somewhere around that. Wow. I'll explain a few things while we're in this part. This is one of the only pieces of information that we received on the Opera House. And this had been handed down to the family that owned this for generations. They were called the Landauer's family, and they had the mercantile in here. And that was from the Opera House, and they had it hanging on the wall, and they just left it here. The owners that bought it from them got a hold of it, and then their son actually brought it up to us. It's an original seating chart. And I'll explain some of this when we do go upstairs. But something that's interesting is, it's called the New Grand Opera House. This is the first floor. There's an orchestra pit, and we're going to walk under this in a minute. And then there's exits coming from the downstairs to this floor. This is one of them, and there's one in the other room that we're going to go through. This is no longer there, but it's a horseshoe-shaped balcony. So that had collapsed, and during World War II, we actually found some correspondence between different people, and they had salvaged the wood out of there and used the metal for the war effort. Cool. I don't know if you've ever seen the pictures down in the courthouse. There's huge piles of scrap iron. I'm pretty sure those seats are in that pile someplace. So this is actually original. The reason I pointed out the new Grand Opera House is the Opera House that began building in 1882, and around 1902, 1904, they closed it and expanded it. And then reopened it, and then it was called the Pratt Theater. So two different names, a little confusing, and very few people even ever heard of the Grand Opera House. The reason this was built in 1882 is the entire block burned. The second time the block burned, it burned around 1850, and they rebuilt. It burned 1880, somewhere there, right from the bank on the corner. All these buildings came down and burned, and that's why the stone buildings are here now. When they rebuilt, and that's why there's firewalls like this between all the units of the building. So that was a devastating fire. Well, since the building's been up, there's been at least one major fire. It's in the day building that connects to it. All right. That's actually a photo of where we're going to end up. As you can see, it's no seats, no balcony. Just a little bit of historic fabric on there. It's a shell of an opera house. And any steel door that we go through, we've added for fire code. So as we work to try to get a certificate of occupancy for the theater. So at one point in time, what you're walking through was all open. Including where the stairwells are.
I smelled fire.
So this is a stairwell that goes up to the Opera House. So those stairs that were on the footprint of it, you would come down these stairs, and this was after a performance.
Big.
The cast would come down here, and the audience was welcome to come down here, and it would be like a meet and greet, what they call it today.
Oh, cool.
And then they would exit either the stairway that we just came up, or out down the front stairwell that we're going to pass, and I'll show that. And on that wall, you can see faint pencil sketchings. It was probably done, I don't know, 1900. I think somebody sat there, stoked the stove, like a glance at it. When the light is bright, you can see a head here. There's a nose. Looks like George Washington.
Yep.
So there's 4 or 5 presidents in here. We uncovered that. And then the marks in the floor must have been, because we uncovered this. You know, no one had seen this for 100 years. He must have had something he did with the fire, or stoked the fire, or something that he was going like this on the floor. Is that interesting? Because the stove would have been here in the chimney.
That makes sense.
But that could be something else, but this was all covered up. We've exposed all this.
Yeah, just pitted the whole floor.
Back to having show bills and things that were glued on and stuff. This door was someplace in the building, and we found it in the basement. And you can see Pratt Theater, Albion, Monday, October, but they,
Just
there's
kept
Pratt Theater. They put,
advertising over advertising.
yeah, new show came through, they just glued it right on the face of it. So, interesting. This area right here where you see the ceiling straps is the orchestra pit. And that's why it's lower than everything else. Now remember, the wall we came through was non-existent, so this was all open. And you'll see that upstairs. These doors weren't meant to be doors. We put the doors in there, part of the fire coating. Other show bills that were put on the walls.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
It's really cool.
That they're still there. It's amazing.
You can see this line in the brick right here. Is where the building was added onto. It's an interesting story that I'll tell you about when we get upstairs because it's easier to explain upstairs.
Oh, what's this room? This is the Civil War room?
Yeah, this is the veterans meeting room.
So the insignias on the wall, they're generic for the entire Civil War Veterans Organization. It's called Grand Army of the Republic, GAR room if they're called. A lot of the symbolism that is laid in with wallpaper is particular to the groups that met here. So the divisions, the cavalries, all the different areas had their own insignias, and so everybody that met here had theirs up. So here's information when we've done some tours, when we were allowed to do tours in the building. We had folks at the high school that were very involved with Civil War, and not only taught it, but they do a Civil War days, and they're reenactors. Put up a bunch of information, and they would come up here and actually be in the garb and meet people and talk with them. The room in the back, you can see the peephole in the door. It was laid out like that was a room with a separate stairwell that probably the folks at the council or whoever ran the organization, the ruling body, let's say, would go up that stairwell and stay in there and could look at the membership out here. It was interesting because I brought a historian up here, and he's been researching guard rooms. He said, I had a feeling they were secretive, like some of the societies that were around them, but we have nothing that would ever show that. And he says, this really says a lot. So we had the state organization asked if they could come up, and they did come up, and they immediately put this room on their website because it's on the 3rd floor, it's still existing. Some of the freestanding ones where they had a little building are still around. But most that were on the 1st floors or 2nd floors have been gutted to put in stores and different things. So they were astounded. They couldn't believe these insignias were still on the walls.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
The part that we're going through now, we built. Because when we got the building, you had to go up a 3-step thing and just dive through a little hole in the wall. Literally. And we had to do all this so we could get a fire code going and have some access. So when you turn onto the wider steps, these are the original steps. Obviously not the handrails, but the steps are original.
watch out.
Yeah, if you don't make them, Jim, put them in.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow, this room is packed.
So, there are about 749 seats on the seating chart. That includes floor and balcony. That's not here.
That's not here yet.
Remember, on the seating chart, that's on the wall, there's 4 black dots. There's where these steel columns sat. So there's 4 of these columns, 2 different heights, and they supported the horseshoe for the balcony. And they probably didn't take them out because they're so heavy. You'd need a hoist or something. They're incredibly heavy. You can lift up one end if you work hard, but heavy enough they weren't going to go down the stairs with them. But,
Right.
so that piece that's flat out there, that's covered, that's the orchestra pit. That I said we're going to see that upstairs. So that goes down that 3 feet. So you'll be interested in the area back here because there are multiple places where stagehands sign.
Oh, wow.
There's a couple show bills back here, and I'll explain how they got up there. But as you walk through here, anything coming through this first hall, from like 1930 to present day, when you get to the part that I say was covered with tin, has been covered since 1905. So anything put on there was pre-1905. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, because there's a thing up here from 1935. People came up and wrote on the wall. But you're going to see some from like 1895. They're hard to see and hard to read, but you hit this doorway, everything, this side of it is pre-1905. So any of these signatures that you see on the side of it, yeah, Shorty Calhoun signed a lot.
He liked the signings.
He's got one on the other side where he signed for 4 years in a row. Do you want me to tell you a few more things?
Sure.
Okay. The stage was added onto. I don't know if this is significant to you, but that stone tree in the bottom didn't burn in the fire, so that was here.
Okay.
The gentleman that owned that piece of property from here to the stone building wanted 3 times its value from John Pratt, who built this, the farmer, and he wouldn't pay it. And he said, well, you can't put a theater in, you're not going to have enough space. But John Pratt was a stubborn farmer. So he built this, walled it right here, open, ran it for 10 years. This guy tried to develop his lot, and similar to today, it wasn't large enough to do anything with. So the value went down. He about gave it to John Pratt. Pratt closed the theater, took the roof off, extended the theater, went over the stone building, added on to everything, put the roof back on, and that's when it became the Pratt Theater. Remember I said it was the Grand Opera House?
Yep.
Grand Theater?